Project is going to be a group project. We'll get into groups of 3 or 4 and figure out how to do this thing, and I'll give you about 5 or 6 weeks to do so. So what you're looking at here is a finished product. All right, this is the geodesic dome that I built over this past weekend, and right now I'm going to show you, there are about 19 or 20 steps on how to build this thing. So first things first, what I want you to do is, after you get done with this video, I want you to check out this video, right? In YouTube, if you simply just search geodesic dome, one of the first links is going to be to this video right here by Science Online. This video is about 18 minutes long and is exactly the video that I used to build my dome. Alright, and this is this video that, if you click on this video, you're going to see that it's way more detailed. He has a ton of actual video of himself building the thing, and this is the one that I would probably look at more so than the video that I'm currently recording. Alright, I'll also link to this in the information on this current video. Alright, so first things first. When we look at domes, right, they're all over the place. The Capitol building in DC has a dome at the top. Right, the Taj Mahal has a dome. Epcot is basically 2 domes put together. Right, you can build greenhouses that are made of domes. You can build actual houses and live in them that are made of domes. Right, this is a geodesic dome house that has windows, doors, shingles. Sports arenas sometimes are made of domes. Playgrounds have domes in them. And this is what your dome is going to look like. Alright, so what I want you to do right now is just kind of look at this picture. Notice that there are 2 types of triangles. There are white triangles that are equilateral, and there are yellow triangles that are not equilateral. They're isosceles, where the legs are different than the base. All right, the equilateral triangles obviously are isosceles too, but specifically they are equilateral, where all the sides are the same. All right, it's sitting on this circular base, which is made out of like a cardstock, or I actually bought it at an art store. It's basically just a big mat that you would mat a picture with, and then it's sitting on top of a foam board, or you can use cardboard. Necessary supplies. There are 10 necessary supplies for this project. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need some white paper. You're going to need a metric ruler. We're going to use centimeters and millimeters for this rather than inches, because they're a little bit more precise. You're going to need scissors. You're going to need a glue stick for sure. You're going to need binder clips. You're going to need thumbtacks. And you're going to need to, once you actually draw your 2 triangles, you have to go to a copy center like Kinko's, FedEx Office Center, Kinko's, and make copies. 10 sheets of white cardstock and 30 sheets of colored cardstock. The 9th supply you'll need is a big square cardstock base, which is this yellow base right here that I actually cut into a big circle. And then you'll finally need this piece of foam board or cardboard to put everything on top of. Alright, that's kind of like your platform that you use to thumbtack things down to. Alright, optional supplies there are 5 of them. Right, if you want to use a protractor, that might be pretty helpful. Not necessary, but might be pretty helpful to draw those triangles. A compass, if you have a compass that opens wide enough, it's definitely helpful. Most compasses that you can buy at a store, you know, like a Walmart or Target or CVS or something, most compasses don't open up large enough to accommodate this project, but some of them do. You might want to use a piece of scrap wood with a sharp edge to do some folding. I'll show you that a little bit later. And instead of scissors, it might be a good idea to get an X-Acto knife or a box cutter to make those big circular cuts. If you do use those, please get an adult to help you out with that. And finally, there's a step at the end that there's an optional step at the end that involves a bottle of white glue. So here we go. Step 1. You get your blank sheet of white paper out and draw an equilateral triangle. All 3 sides are going to be 15.45 centimeters. Alright, and a couple different ways to do that, right? You can literally just start with a side that's 15.45, alright, and then from that corner draw another side up here that's 15.45, and then make sure the third side is the same. It takes a while, alright? It took me probably 15 minutes to get this perfect. Or you can use a protractor and make sure that you draw your first side of 15.45 centimeters, and then the angles, of course, as you know, in regular triangles are 60 degrees all the way around. So use your protractor to put in a 60-degree angle and a 60-degree angle, and then just see where they meet. Here's where you can use your compass too. You can open your compass up if it opens that wide to 15.45, and then draw an arc up here and an arc up here. Right, in the other video, he goes through that process a little bit more. You'll also notice that there are sort of little tabs here, little rails that are 1 centimeter long that you'll need. These are the gluing tabs, right? This tab right here is 1 centimeter wide. This one is as well, and this one is as well. You'll need those. Those are mandatory. And notice I'm kind of like angling them off, right? So the tabs, when they fold down, they don't get in the way of each other. All right, and again, this is it's so critical that you're perfect on this. It took me a couple different tries to get mine to be precise. If you're not precise, your whole project's going to look kind of silly. It's not going to work right. All right, so that's your first type of triangles. You're going to need 10 of those on white cardstock. You're going to need 30 isosceles triangles on a colored cardstock. I used yellow. You can use red or blue or whatever. And the base of this thing down here, we'll call that segment A. All right, that base is 15.45 centimeters. All right, these legs of the isosceles triangle are a little bit shorter. They're 13.66 centimeters. Again, 1 inch or 1 centimeter glue tabs angled off. Make sure it's perfect. If it's not perfect, again, it's not going to work right. Put that on a blank white sheet of paper, and once you have those 2 triangles perfect, you're ready to go to a photocopier. If you're really smart, you're gonna put 2 or 3 triangles, or maybe even 4 triangles on 1 sheet of paper. I think actually you might only be able to put 2, but I actually didn't do that, and I had to. I didn't make my photocopies in the most efficient manner possible. Again, he shows you a little bit more of that in the other video. All right, once you have those 2, you're ready to go to a copy center. All right, get a couple dollars together with your team members and make 10 copies of the equilateral triangle on white cardstock and 30 copies of the isosceles triangle on colored cardstock. What I did when I made my copies was I made about 12 copies of the white one and 32 or 3 copies of the colored one, just in case I made any mistakes. And I ended up making a few mistakes, so I needed those extras. I included a map here where the closest Kinkos are to our school. There's one on like 10th and Chestnut, and there's one on like 12th and Market. And again, it's not going to cost too much money there. So when you do that, again, you'll need 30 of the isosceles, and you'll need 10 of the equilateral. Equilaterals we're going to put in white cardstock, and you can choose the color on your isosceles. Notice I'm putting, before I make my copies, I'm putting capital B right here and here, and capital A right there. All right, it's important to do that. Later on, you'll see that as we put this whole thing together, it's going to be helpful to have those letters in place. Step 4, once you have them copied, right, you want to cut them all out, all along those glue tabs. So the very, very outside perimeter, just cut them out. Be really, really careful. And again, use your teammates. It takes a while. I did this all by myself, and it took me, the whole project took me quite a few hours. But since you're going to have 2 or 3 teammates here, you guys can divide up the work. But again, 10 white equilateral triangles and 30 of the colored isosceles triangles. Step 5, you want to start folding back your glue tabs. To do that, you want to be really precise again. If you're not precise, it's not going to work, right? So get a sharp piece of scrap wood and just kind of help to fold along those lines. All right, when they're all folded, they're going to look like this over here and like this right here. All right, really, really sharp, crisp edges along those folds. That takes a long time. Again, use your teammates. Step 6, we're going to start to assemble the pentagons. All right, and the way that we assemble them is we attach all the B segments together and make sure that the A segments, the A sides, are on the outside of our pentagon. All right, so what I did is I put, and again, follow the other video, he goes through a little bit more detail, but I put 5 of them all together using binder clips to, I use a glue stick right on the glue tabs, and I use binder clips to hold them together. And before I finished off that 6th seam, I let it dry. All right, and then about an hour, maybe it doesn't take an hour, but maybe about 15 minutes later, I came back and I finished off that last seam, which makes the pentagon sort of pop up into like a shield, right? And all along, I'm using binder clips to hold everything together. There are going to be 6 of these pentagons. Each, of course, has 5 triangles. 6 times 5 is 30. Once you have all 5 of those, once you have all 6 of those pentagons, then you are ready to create your base. So you take your cardstock base, right? It's kind of difficult to find one that is 56 centimeters square in a store, so you probably have to cut the whole thing out into a square. And to do that, of course, just use a ruler, check your diagonals, right? Check your angles, however you want to do that. All right, then we're going to want to find the center of your base. To find the center of a square, it's pretty simple. Just draw on your diagonals. Your diagonals are going to intersect at the center. All right, and that center is where we're going to draw 3 concentric circles. All right, and to draw those really big circles, you need to make a compass out of a scrap piece of cardstock. You'll have some cardstock left over from your big base. So what you want to do is just punch a hole with a thumbtack at a certain point. We'll call that 0. Measure 16 centimeters, punch another hole. Measure 25 centimeters from the original point, punch a hole, and then 27 centimeters from the original point and punch a hole. All right, that compass, we're going to put a thumbtack in the 0 hole at the center, and we're just going to kind of swing it around. There's our 16 centimeter circle. There's our 25 centimeter circle. The radius is 25 centimeters. And there's our 27. All right, if you do that right, there's going to be an inch left over on each side. All right. These 3 circles are going to kind of sort of guide us through the rest of the project. We're going to cut around the outside and get rid of the outer sort of leftover base. We're going to want to cut along the inside to provide us sort of an access point to that we'll use later to finish off the dome. All right, this remaining circle, right along this circle right here, is where you're actually going to start gluing your project down. All right, so the outer circle is basically the edge of your project, if you will. The inner circle is to help you gain access underneath the dome, and this middle circle is the one that you're actually going to glue down your triangles. All right, underneath that base, you're going to put your foam board or your cardboard. All right, again, make it into a 56 centimeter square, and then cut out a 16 centimeter circle from the center. That's a radius. So find your center, cut out that circle, right, and then place your base on top of that. All right, and to kind of keep those 2 together, just use some thumbtacks or some push pins, right? Just kind of pin it down. Okay, So from there, now we're actually going to want to start gluing our white equilateral triangle cardstocks to our pentagonal shields, our pentagons. So you just want to glue these two together, being really precise that the edge lines up and the corners line up. And just use a glue stick and your binder clips. And after you're done with that, you're just going to glue it down to the circle that is showing. Right, so right along this edge, just glue that down. Glue this down. Make sure the vertices actually touch the circle, and just tack it down. Thumbtack that down to the base. All right, and then you're just going to kind of go around the whole thing, gluing all the stuff together. You can see my binder clips on the inside here. You can see my thumbtacks on the bottom, and you just kind of glue all 6 pentagons, or excuse me, all 5 pentagons and these triangles, and just kind of glue it all around. Some more pictures of that. Again, you can see my binder clips holding my glue tabs together, and you can see that the outside circle is just kind of like the edge of the project. This circle is where all the triangles line up, and the inner circle is kind of like an access point. I bought foam board, so it's not cardboard. It's not brown, but it's just a white foam board that I bought from an art store. All right, next you want to just kind of fill in, or there's a more of a straight over the top view of the thing. All right, you can see kind of how it's coming together. Next, you want to fill in these little blanks with the white equilateral triangles. Right, just glue all those together. You can see the binder clips kind of peeking out there, and that leaves you just with one vacant pentagon on the top. Right, and one of the reasons that we left the bottom open, that circle at the bottom open, is so we can access all that stuff from underneath. All right, so this is a photo from underneath. You can see my binder clips holding all my glue tabs together. In between each of these steps, I let it dry for a little bit. So now what I'm going to do from the bottom is put in my last pentagon. All right, and it should fit nicely right in there. All right, so here's an aerial view of the finished product. And at the very, very end, what I did, and he recommends it in his video too, is just run a bead of glue along the perimeter. This is just white glue from a bottle now, not a glue stick. But white glue from a bottle, just run a bead of that along the perimeter of the entire dome just to kind of keep it in place. Alright, not necessary, but I think it's a pretty good idea. It'll dry clear, so it's not going to really make the project look strange. And that's it. Alright, your finished product is going to be your geodesic dome with 30 yellow triangles and 10 white triangles sitting on top of your circular base and sitting on top of your cardboard or foam board platform. All right, when you bring it to school, you're probably going to want to keep it on that platform, but you can remove that platform once you're ready to hand it in. All right, here's another photograph of one of the domes from his video. You can see this one's in red. And again, here's the video that really goes through step by step what you need to do. So I hope you have fun with this project. All along I'm going to be helping you guys out, especially at first how to draw these triangles. But it's a really fun project. Definitely has a lot of geometry involved and a lot of precision involved. And I hope you guys have a good time with it.